like to welcome you back to Thrive in the Word. Thank you for joining us today. Again, if you would like to help us out, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and we will be able to reach more people than ever before. Today we're in the book of Revelation, the second chapter, verse number 20. So if you would find in your Bibles, Revelations, the second chapter, verse number 20, and read along with me. Now, let me just say this. In verse number 19, Jesus gives 5 things as a compliment to the church at Thyatira. In other words, Jesus wasn't really upset with his church. He was saying, I see and I know what you're doing. I see it. I know what you're doing. But then in verse number 20, we get to this place where Jesus says, but I have this against you. Now, Jesus only had one thing against the church at Thyatira. I believe there's a lot of churches today that if Jesus were to come to them, he would say, you know what, I see it. I know what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing, but I've got one thing against you. Now, what was the one thing that Jesus had against the church at Thyatira? This is what it says. He says, I have this against you, that you tolerate the woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, and she teaches and leads my bondservants astray, so that they commit acts of immorality and eat things sacrificed to idols. What is Jesus saying? This is what I've got against you. You tolerate. That's a big word today. We are inundated with people saying, you need to have tolerance. You need to have tolerance. You need to tolerate sin. You know what? Jesus had one thing against the church at Thyatira, and that was that they were tolerating an evil woman. You see, we need to understand that Jesus does not ever condone tolerance of sin. Now, that doesn't mean we don't love the sinner, but that we confront them and that we deal with them in our churches. This word tolerance actually means that you did not set her aside or send her away. We in churches, we need to realize that we do not tolerate sin as far as people who are ministering in the churches. Now, he says that you tolerate this woman Jezebel. Now, I don't believe that this woman's name is Jezebel, but I believe that the word or the name Jezebel here is descriptive of this woman. This woman has the spirit of Jezebel. Now, for us to understand what the spirit of Jezebel is like, we need to go back to the Old Testament. The Old Testament, the book of 1 Kings 16, verse 31. And it came about as though it had been a trivial thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, but that he married Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and went to serve Baal and worship him. And then in chapter 21, verse 25 of 1 Kings, and surely there was no one like Ahab, who sold himself to do evil in the sight of the Lord, because Jezebel, his wife, incited him. What's it talking about? It's talking about here Queen Jezebel. Ahab had married her. But what happened is she began to influence the heart of Ahab. She began to influence him to do things and to turn against the God of Israel. And so what is a Jezebel spirit? A Jezebel spirit is not just a woman, I don't believe. But a Jezebel spirit is a person who has tremendous influence over people. And it's not an influence towards godliness, but it's an influence towards sin. Now, notice what it says. You tolerated her. In other words, you didn't send her away. And then he goes on and he says, who calls herself a prophetess. Notice it didn't say who was ordained as a prophet or prophetess. He didn't say now we came together as leadership and we believed and laid hands on her and ordained her. No, she called herself a prophetess. Brothers and sisters, listen to me. Watch out for self-proclaimed prophets and prophetesses. Because many times they're trying to use that office to influence you. Not to influence you in a way that's good, but to influence you in a way that's going to ruin your marriages. It's going to ruin your life. It's going to lead you into sin. Now notice again what it says. It says, and she teaches and leads. What does she do? She has gotten to the point that in the church at Thyatira, she is teaching. We need to be extremely careful of who we allow to speak in our churches. Don't take them because they're popular. Don't allow them because they're popular. Don't tolerate them because they're popular. And don't place them in a place of leadership because, and this is the end of verse number 20, she leads my bondservants astray. My bondservants, the people who are following me, the people who had committed their lives to me, she's leading some of these people astray. And she's leading them to commit acts of immorality and to eat things sacrificed to idols. What is she leading them to? First of all, the Jezebel spirit, the outcome of a Jezebel spirit is acts of immorality. It could be homosexuality. This word immorality is it's all inclusive of all immoral acts. It could be fornication. It could be adultery. It could be a whole bunch of other types of immoral acts. But what is she doing? She is leading these people astray by teaching them that it's okay to have immorality, by teaching them that it's okay to eat the food that's sacrificed to idols. And what this means here is it's okay to experience and experiment with the occult and all the other forms of foreign religions. A Jezebel spirit. We're going to see what Jesus says to this Jezebel spirit tomorrow. Thank you for joining us.